Hello, New Zealand. Welcome to Political Playback. And as usual, it's Simon O'Connor. Where were you last week, Simon? Pretty gutted you weren't here.
Well, yeah, rumour has it you weren't here either, as we were, of course, both at the Forum on the Family. A great success, Bob.
Yeah, exactly. It was fun. Nobody emailed me to say, where are you, Bob? But I guess everybody saw the announcement on social media. So anyway, nice to have people back on board. If you are watching, welcome. If you're on LinkedIn or X or Substack, Facebook, number of channels that are on Facebook, YouTube as well. The way that we'll see your comments come through is if you're on our YouTube account, Family First, or on our Facebook page, Family First as well. That way they'll come right to my computer and we might just be able to show them. But you're welcome to argue on any other of the other platforms that we happen to be on as well. Simon, we've got a big lineup today, so let's get straight into it. And we're going to start with our image of the week, and it's this one which just still stuns me. Helen Clark, John Key turning up to this parade alongside, these three. Simon, should we be... Actually, I've got this photo as well that you sent through. Just showing who was there. Dan Andrews from Victoria. What do you think? I mean, should Helen Clark and John Key have gone to this in terms of foreign affairs? Is it a good statement, good political nous, or is it sending all the wrong messages?
It was a terrible decision. They're welcome to make it as private citizens. They don't represent New Zealand in any way. But the CCP, President Xi and them will love it. The cachet of former New Zealand Prime Ministers attending his military parade. They'll love it. So it was completely the wrong decision by Key and Clark, amongst other things, Bob. And this really upsets me actually for a number of reasons. But fundamentally, this is President Xi trying to rewrite Chinese history because the communists had very little to do with fighting the Japanese. They sat back and waited for the nationalist forces to basically bleed out figuratively and literally. And then once they were weakened after the war, the communists took over. So this is a whole parade really trying to rewrite history. And the likes of Clark and Key, and you mentioned Dan Andrews from Victoria, they had Rob Carr there as well, another communist sympathiser from Australia. All it does is legitimise these guys. And the wider club, that picture you've got there, Putin, Kim Jong-un, and that's just two of the despots. And Key and Clark were happy to go. And so it completely wrong call, wrong decision.
Okay, now in fairness, TV3 3 News actually spoke to Helen Clark. And look, just before I play this and you comment on it, I actually gave credit to the media that they actually did an interview the way that I think professional media should. It was you could tell that they disagreed with Clark and Key being there, but they asked it in a respectful way to draw out the information. But I thought they would only do that because they like Helen Clark. So anyway, let's just play this clip. I'm interested to get your response.
Yeah, I think we can all understand the relationship between New Zealand and China, which you've talked about as being behind your reason for going. But it was very odd seeing two former New Zealand Prime Ministers in what was essentially a class photo with arguably some of the world's biggest bad guys. In hindsight, do you think it was the right call to be there?
Well, I've said publicly it was a line call. I gave it a great deal of thought, and I always anticipated that there would be guests there whom we would not invite to events in our own country. So you factor that in. But there were also a lot of good friends of New Zealand. Malaysian Prime Minister was there, Singapore Deputy, among the former leaders group where I was, not with the other group. There were a lot of former democratically elected leaders. So quite a broad grouping. The New Zealand government was represented. The Australian government was represented. You know, this in the end had a broad viewing audience in Beijing.
You buy that?
Oh, look, I buy her honesty that she would have thought about it long and hard, but it was still the wrong call. I mean, at the end of the day, she's at a military parade for an autocratic dictatorship that is daily threatening to use said military against the likes of Taiwan, who are daily threatening Filipino fishing fleets and others. And she and Key and any of those other democratic former politicians endorse this communist regime by turning up. They don't need to be there. She said it herself, Bob. We were represented by our diplomats, and that's perfectly appropriate with a state-to-state relationship. She and Key, Dan Andrews, Bob Carr, and others actively chose. And by the way, she's there on a laptop from Beijing. So I hope she's not logging into all her Facebook and accounts. And I'm not being silly. I mean, why? Yeah, it's just maddening. And by the way, just to put this in, only 2 weeks ago, Bob, she was at the Gaza border lamenting military might, lamenting warfare. And now, a day ago, she's at a massive military parade where basically China's threatening the world. Can she not see that? She clearly can't. Most of us, though, can.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the media coverage was hysterical because of the fact that when Trump did a parade in Washington, D.C. recently, it was like the end of the world and how dare he. And now they're, all over this military parade in China. And it's also the human rights aspect that I just think that people, these leaders are completely missing. I mean, they talk about all this goodwill towards China, and yet we are aware of the human rights abuses. We're aware that probably we're getting a lot of cheap goods because of slave labor, and yet nobody wants to talk about that. It's like China is the new good guy and the US is the new bad guy because of the orange guy.
Yeah, look, I think it's actually a really good summary. I mean, China's human rights abuses are as broad as they are deep and deeply shocking. Good democracy activists, Jimmy Lai, Andy Lee, are languishing in prisons in Hong Kong, for example. I talk about the Tibetans, the Uyghurs, the list goes on, House Christians. And yet, by attending these events, Clark, Key, and others legitimize the behavior of these groups. Because again, they're not there to talk. She's not going to listen to them. They're not able to, even if they wanted. By the way, they would not do this. But Clark and Key aren't talking to Xi about his human rights abuses. They are part of a pantomime, a propaganda tool, and a part of rewriting history. So it was wrong on just about every level to attend. And one has to wonder what the motivations are, though one of them, Bob, will be just still trying to be relevant, which is the same for why the Australian ones were there too.
Okay. I mean, I thought the fact that the Canadian Prime Minister, even the Australian Prime Minister, UK Prime Minister, most of European leaders weren't there. I thought that was a pretty, strong statement in itself. They stayed away, and yet some of our representatives went. So anyway, it's very interesting. Let's move on to some other interesting stuff. So this is fresh. This is hot off the press. This has literally just come out a couple of hours ago. And so we've been reading. In fact, I think I threw the 300-page document at you and told you to speed read it, which you have, and I'm very grateful. So the Law Commission have come out with their recommendations about how we can stop hurty feelings towards basically, transgender, people who are non-binary, and people, they always chuck in this intersex issue, which I say is a medical issue. But I just want to show an excerpt before I let you loose on this report and tell us. This was the bit that you highlighted to me, which really got my blood pressure up. They say that, woman's pregnancy, we need to get rid of that. So they said, we recommend that we amend this and clarify that it applies to anyone who is pregnant or gives birth, because apparently it's not just women. And then they say this, although most people who become pregnant and give birth are women, not all are. Well, strike me down with a feather. The Law Commission are completely nutters and bonkers. In fact, I suggested on Twitter that they should rename themselves as the Dumb Ideas Commission, or DIC for short. But anyway, what's your thoughts, Simon?
So that's thrown me. Look, it's deeply disappointing, but not unexpected. From the moment the Law Commission chose to do this report, put out its terms of reference and so forth, it was completely compromised by gender ideology. So while I read 427 pages,
that's impressive.
Speed, a whole third more, it reads exactly like anyone would expect, which is to create a victim narrative around transgender and non-binary, and that recommendations include that actually, basically that this is now going to become a protected group of people, and they want that to be then a form of discrimination. In other words, if you are saying, like Carolee Smith from the forum, hey, look, men shouldn't be allowed to play in women's sports team, that will be discrimination. If you are wanting to send your kid to a single-sex school and it turns out they're going to let a transgender child in, that's discrimination if you try to stop it. So it's exactly what the trans activists want. They get to be protected in their delusion, and the Law Commission's just gone completely along with it, including that example that you just gave. They've completely drunk the Kool-Aid. And, the simplest thing to say, which I probably should have said at the start, if the Law Commission's report gets adopted by government, and we can tease it out a bit if you like, but if this was made into actual law, the category of woman would effectively disappear from this country. Woman would no longer exist. It's replaced with whoever wants to believe whatever they are. That's how crazy this commission report is.
Okay, so let me just clarify that the Law Commission were asked to do this report by the national government or coalition. I
think it's a hangover from the previous government. I could be wrong on that, and I'm happy to be corrected if it comes through the comments. I suspect it's either a hangover or the government didn't throw it out when they had the chance. It's similar, Bob, why we're also having to have the Law Commission look at hate crime. I have no idea why the current coalition government have allowed it, but I think at times, speaking politically, the right side of politics tries to be moderate. Oh, well, let's not be too ruthless and toss out all these stupid ideas. We'll just leave some of them. But what ends up happening, like this report, is now a narrative, and almost impulse will be required of government to do something. And again, the something is removing the category of women and men, to be fair, too. But basically, women are the ones who get targeted most. Being a woman will no longer exist in New Zealand law as we know it today.
Okay, so just tease it out. The report has come back. It's recommended that the Human Rights Commission include hurty feelings to transgender. That would involve a bill, possibly a government bill. I don't think a government would go down that because I don't think they'd get it past ACT or New Zealand First. There is a private member's bill in at the moment. I know they've been trying to do this for years. I think Louisa Wall was involved, and then Elizabeth Kitty, who, got turfed out of the Greens, had it. I think there's another MP that's got it in the bill now, one from Greenswood to Pati Maori. So it's still got to be drawn on. I don't think the government's going to adopt this, are they? They'll want it to go away, won't they?
They will. So important for people to understand, the Law Commission holds an important role, but it does not make the laws. It makes recommendations like this one. And you can guarantee, Bob, in a few months' time when they release their hate crime one, they'll be pushing for hate speech and hate crime laws for all their friends in various protected classes, which, by the way, doesn't apply to people like you and I or anyone who believes in liberal democracy. So it'll be up to the government to respond. But what you're going to see is from the activists, the media and others, they'll be piling pressure onto the government to react. And it will take a bit of strength from the government to say, look, we're just not doing this. Because, of course, the counter will be, well, the Law Commission's independent and they've told you as experts you should do it. Why are you ignoring it? So expect the pressure to really pile on. But it would be a bad move by the government to adopt this. I think you'll find even more people will turn away from voting from them because they're clearly not centre-right and they're clearly not conservative.
I think it's Debbie Ngārewa Packer. Yeah, it is.
Yep. And by the way, Elizabeth Kitty was one of the advisors for this report.
Yeah, and if anybody made a submission on the conversion therapy law, they'll quickly find out just how inclusive and diverse Elizabeth Kitty is based on the response if you turned up and said you didn't agree with the bill. Right, all right, let's keep going. And fascinatingly, the Māori Party have been accused of racism. Who would have believed it? Takutai Ferris, who's one of the more objectionable members of Parliament from Te Pāti Māori, he was upset that there are Indians, Asians, Black and Pākehā campaigning for Labour in the by-election that's coming up. They're campaigning for a Māori Henare. Wow, this is a racist post. Now, I hear, just an update, I do hear that the Te Pāti Māori have apologised, despite calling the government genocidal and lots of other insults that have flown across the House. For some reason, they apologised. There must be a by-election coming up on Saturday. Just before you comment on this one, even Willie Jackson wasn't too comfortable about all this, although he was struggling to be uncomfortable about it.
What do you make of what Takuta has put on Instagram today?
Oh, it's totally unacceptable, and really it's showing huge disrespect to those people who all support Māori. We don't apologise in Labour for working with our different electorates, some of them Pākehā, ethnics,
He's struggling.
Pacifica. We think it's great. I mean, we've got strong Māori membership, but one of the things in Labour is everyone's contributing, and it's not just about Māori. It's about Aotearoa. It's about New Zealand. So it's really disappointing from him. He should know better.
Is it racist?
I mean, of course it is.
What do you make of that, saying that there are Asians, Indians, blacks and Pākehā trying to steal a Māori seat from Māori?
The Labour Party is a party for all New Zealanders. All of our party has been involved in this campaign and we're really proud of that.
Oh, that's so uniting. I mean, it's quite lovely to hear. We're all one nation. Yeah, it's quite ironic that the party that always yells racism is accused of racism.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me, because more often than not, and we've talked about this before, those who run about screaming epithets at other people, that they're racist or that they're intolerant or they're fascists, are themselves that. They're really just talking about themselves. And so this is downright straight up racism by Takutu Ferris. He has not apologised, as far as I understand, Bob. The party has. They say the post has been taken down, but I think you and I were noting that the account's being locked. So he's probably been given a telling off. I think even the Te Pāti Māori leaders would realise that this was stepping well too far. And I think Labour's response indicates that they don't want to be too closely tied to Te Pāti Māori. They know this is a risk as they anticipate the election next year, that National and New Zealand First Act will be saying, look, you might not like us, but do you really want the three-headed hydra of Te Pāti Māori, Greens and Labour? So you can see them trying to distance themselves. But this is it's just awful. It's just blatantly racist, but it does tell you the heart of that MP, and I would argue of Te Pāti Māori. They actually think they own and control everything, and everyone but themselves are just visitors, or as they would call us, manahiri. And doubly so when it comes to what Willie Jackson, I think, wrongly calls ethnics. It's a very old school feudal mindset that they have, which is somehow Te Pāti Māori are just going to sit on their marae and all the rest of us will just serve them. It's pretty disparaging, disappointing, and just ugly.
Okay, prediction, sorry to put this on you, but prediction for the by-election, Labour or Te Pāti Māori? The win.
I would expect Penny Henare myself, although interested, I see Audrey Young is picking the other way. So
really?
We'll wait and see. But
you know that Manurewa Marae doesn't have a voting booth this time, so that's why I'm predicting Labour.
Well, that's partly where my thinking's going as well. The corruption, the alleged corruption of last time is not operating. Labour should have a bigger and better ground game. But there is sort of a romanticism as well around Te Pāti Māori. They get a lot of coverage despite how small they are. And the other thing too, and this is a counter to Penny Henare winning, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he lost, but I am expecting him to win. But you have to realise that turnout is exceptionally low. I think there's only a couple of thousand have voted so far. And so there's a higher chance, Bob, that you're just going to end up with the radical activist wing of that electorate, that very large electorate voting, and that, could be a positive for Te Pāti Māori. But yeah, I'm happy to put my neck out. I think Penny will win. In
fairness, by-elections always have low turnouts?
They do, but this is like appallingly low. But yeah, it's hard to get excited by it. And then to be fair, on both the candidates, they've got their signs up, but no one notices because they're surrounded by all the council signs.
Okay, well, that's a good segue into the fact that the Pāti Māori candidates had a nightmare of media coverage, wouldn't even front up to some interviews yesterday or the day before, I think it was. But so Orini Kaipara, she used to be on News Hub. She used to be a broadcaster. Actually, I was just thinking, how many broadcasters have become politicians? I was thinking there was...
Maggie Barry, Pam Corkery, Willie Jackson, John Tamahiri. I'm not sure if he did after he was in politics or
after,
before.
I think. And also the who's the Pacific Islander in Labor that did the conversion therapy law?
Shane Halbert, was he media?
No, the guy that he used to be on One News. I'll Google it while you're
Chris
talking.
Farfoy.
Chris Farfoy, thank you.
Farfoy.
So look, about five media people. So you would think that they would turn up to interviews pretty well prepared. Now, look, I just want to show you a couple of clips. It's kind of like some media training, and I do want to ask you if you've ever had a disastrous media interview, Simon. So this is your confession time. But there was one part where Orini Kaipara, who I think I was cheering and with her answer, and I actually think she would be totally opposed to the report out of the Law Commission because she actually understands the difference between male and female, men and women, and that only women have the womb. Have a listen.
The difference between Penny and I is that I am a wahine, and it's not a gender difference. It's actually wahine Māori, especially if you've grown in a place like this, in our kohanga, you are bred to become a caretaker, a kaitiaki of te ao wairua as well as te ao kiko kiko. What is te ao wairua? It's all the spiritual, the intangible, and that's mātauranga tuku iho. We are the caretakers of our wombs, which is te whare tangata, and there is a saying, ki te kore he wahine, ka ngaro te whenua, ka ngaro te tangata, ka ngaro te whakapapa. Without women, there is no land, there is no whānau, and you lose whakapapa, because we have the wombs that give birth to men and women. You know, there is te mana o te tāne and te mana o te wahine, neither is competitive, but they must work together, because without the man, the female has no male voice, nor that male protection. And without the female, the male cannot enter a marae space or anywhere sacred where the female must be the leader in terms of the domain and the tikanga around that.
Ooh, fantastic statements. I mean, will she actually belong in Te Pāti Māori with binary views like that?
No, in fact, there's probably a small element of her being told off in the background because, you know, if it's taken at face value, that's very, well, we'd agree with it. So she finds herself aligned with family first, that there are only two biological sexes, and actually, you know, to be a mother is something to be proud of, and to raise children. I mean, I recall in the abortion debates in Parliament discussing the whole element of whakapapa, that, you know, again, if you abort the child, you're not, particularly in Te Ao Māori, you're wiping out whakapapa, the genealogy. There's something much, much deeper going on here. But you'll also find, Bob, you'll get the gymnastics from Te Pāti Māori supporters and others that will say, oh, well, that's her particular view of Te Ao Māori. It's a very flexible mindset, I have found, because, you know, it can be pro-abortion and pro-life, pro-gender theory, as well as, you know, pro-biological reality, just sort of what suits the day.
Okay, well, the interview did go all downhill from that because it was kind of like she doesn't understand politics, because she basically started to argue that the opposition could overturn legislation, which of course they can't. And she was rescued by Jack Tame. Have a watch.
But there's nothing that you can point to that has materially changed, right, over the last...
In terms of policy?
In terms of policy, nothing that's materially improved the lives of te iwi Māori. I get the point that you're making about the importance of what you see as the fight and what that might represent in a more kind of philosophical or cultural sense, but there's nothing that's kind of materially improved, is there?
Yeah, well,
can you think of any?
In opposition, where Te Pāti Māori has, I mean, they have repealed quite a few, you know, and actively repealed. We're still in the process of repealing. I know, there's not much...
What do you mean?
Trying to think.
Were they repealing?
Well, there's... Okay, hang on, I need my phone. It is the...
Okay, let me pick up on a point. Okay. As in the government's repealing things?
No. I mean Te Pāti Māori. Sorry, I don't have my phone on me.
You're talking about the importance of
rescued by Jack Tame. That was pretty disastrous. It was almost like was she just confused under the heat of the moment, or doesn't understand politics?
I think it's more the latter, unfortunately. And actually, I think Jack handled it quite well. You know, he doesn't have to insert himself in much further or put the boot in. But I think what it shows is a person who doesn't understand politics, you'd have to actually question her motivations for going in if she doesn't understand the absolute basics. So yeah, in opposition, you don't get to repeal anything. When you're doing an interview, you never pull out your phone to quickly read the notes. You just don't do that. But, you know, to be slightly fair on her, Bob, this tells me that Te Pāti Māori, the leadership and others have not gotten around her to provide her some support. I think it also begins to indicate, as what some of us feel around media personalities, is that really she was just a news reader. You know, she might have been able to do that relatively okay on whatever channel she was on, but actually having the substance, understanding the arguments and being able to articulate something extempore or off the cuff is clearly not a skill of hers. So yeah, that's a walker wreck, not just a train wreck.
Okay, I like that. I didn't get any better. Just before I do, just show you 3 short clips. Have you ever had a disastrous media interview that you can think of where you really? I actually remember I was on Q&A once with Jack Tame, and I remember he was asking a question, and my eyes just started to glaze over because I couldn't understand what he was getting at. It was a really long-winded question, and at the end, I think I just started another topic. Have you ever been in a situation like that where you look back and think, "Oh man, that went to custard"?
No is the short answer, and that's not because of anything great. I don't think I've had a disastrous interview. I've been sitting here the last couple of minutes going, "What's there?" But there's certainly been interviews that I've been disappointed at myself, where you stumble on words, or it's like, "Oh, I could have said that a lot better." So lots of interviews like that. But generally, no, and that's probably luck more than anything else.
Yeah. Okay. Look, just not to rub it in, but this is just, if you're going to get into politics or you're going to do a media interview, you need to be over your questions. You need to have done your prep. That's all I can say. I remember when I was on with Chloe Schwarbrick at the beginning of the cannabis referendum, and it was Sunday night Q&A. I remember, I can still picture myself sitting in the lounge going through my notes. I would have spent the whole afternoon studying, making sure that I had my facts correct. She got asked 3 questions. I mean, well, have a watch.
In terms of policies, you say you want mana whenua to have first right of refusal for significant private land. So how would that work?
That's a good question. I will have to get back to you on that.
That's your policy.
That's Te Pāti Māori's policy.
Yeah. That's one of your priorities, though,
yes,
right?
It is. No, and it is. And why don't
you? Number 2?
Among your other priorities as a candidate is to tackle the skyrocketing cost of food that I think is affecting many whānau around the motu. What's causing high food prices?
What's causing high food prices? You tell me. Is it the economy right now?
Okay.
Identity is obviously absolutely central and kind of fundamental to Te Pāti Māori's campaigning, and you introduce yourself online by saying, quote, "I am in essence unapologetically Māori." What makes someone Māori?
That's a really good question. What makes someone Māori? For me, it's heart.
Okay. It doesn't matter what party they're in. I would just say, look, if you're struggling with that, you're not going to survive in the bear pit.
No, won't survive. But I think it also indicates, Bob, that she's really just been put in there as name recognition. There doesn't seem to be a lot of substance. And I don't try to say that cruelly, but those weren't difficult questions. I mean, particularly the last one, should it be the easiest to someone Māori in her case? I would assume, I'm not Maori myself, of course, that whakapapa isn't a big essential part of being Māori, the connection to the land or the whenua. I mean, gosh, even a whitey like me can answer the question, and yet here she has made a huge thing of her Māoriness. Can't get it. No, I just think, unfortunately, she's coming across as a real lightweight, and I assume therefore to Pāti Māori thought, well, because she's a somewhat celebrity, former newsreader and a woman, that she should just be able to cruise in. But what a disappointment that is.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to the other side of the house. And look, the latest polling suggests the blue line, this is the IPSOS poll, the latest one, and confidence in the government fixing up the cost of living. We've all got short memories. This is just in the last kind of 18 months, but we've all forgotten how bad Labor was, and we now think that they can solve the problem. In fact, so much so that when you look at the top 20 issues, the red is where people think Labor can solve the problem, and the blue is where Labor can. There's a green one there. Let me just sort of slide down that, but you can see there for all those topics, National, it's funny, the National can solve the economy, the most favourites, that's kind of interesting. Law and order, they definitely got some strong issues there, but all the rest, it's just not good at all. Once again, is this just bad optics, bad messaging, media constantly on them, or should they really be worried?
Well, they should be worried, not panicked. I know I say that quite often, but these aren't good results. These aren't good metrics. I suspect a lot of it is just people are grumpy, and for good reason at the moment. There is a cost of living crisis. Things are exceptionally expensive. Power is expensive. Food is expensive. Everything's expensive. It's been a cold, wet winter. We're all grumpy. And so I think it's relatively easy at this point in time to say, well, look, we're sick of National. We're sick of the coalition. We're just going to support Labor. I suspect as we get closer to the election, people will reflect a bit more. They'll be a bit more, if you will, rational, not just emotional. But it still is a concern. I think you're right. The media keep putting the boot into the coalition government no matter what. But the government's got to do better too at its optics and its messaging. Yeah. And it's not helping. And we talked, can't have been last week, the week prior, when the finance minister was saying people are just, merchants of misery if they're talking the economy down, when actually it's just ordinary New Zealanders who are finding it really hard to pay for just the ordinary things. Yeah.
Okay, look, some interesting polling came out that Newsroom highlighted, and basically I was just keen to have a quick chat, just fascinating the relationship between National voters and New Zealand First. I think if I was to sum up whether New Zealand First voters were more likely to go to National or to Labor, I would assume National just because more socially conservative. But the analysis of the data, so let me just show you a few graphs. National Party voters aren't that keen on New Zealand First. You can see there that they wanted to be in partnership with ACT, 57%, but New Zealand First, just 10%. So National Party voters aren't that keen on New Zealand First. ACT voters love National, but they're not too keen on New Zealand First either. What other parties did New Zealand First voters want in government? Interestingly, well, they don't like the Greens, but they do like National and ACT. So it's kind of like New Zealand First voters are sharing the love, but they're not getting it back. Here's another one. Who do Labor like? Well, Labor voters like the Greens. Probably no surprise there. Now, this one was interesting. So that top line sort of shows that the majority of us, 52%, prefer to be, 51% prefer to a coalition to a single party. We all got freaked out when Labor had those 3 years of being a majority government, so probably no surprise. And just one more graph. I mean, you're all graphed out by now. But New Zealand First voters, how they voted in 2020, half of New Zealand First voters in 2023 voted for Labor in 2020. So I guess the point I'm making here from just analysing this is that there's more of a intersection between New Zealand First and Labor than New Zealand First and National. And that actually surprises me. Does that surprise you?
Not completely. So starting at the start, I'm not going to go through every graph, partly because now I've forgotten half of them. No.
You tell me, I'll follow you.
Yeah, I mean, National voters don't trust Winston. They've got long enough memories to recall, Bill English winning in 2017, or getting the majority of the vote, and then Winston decided to go with Jacinda. So National's very wary of Winston, and they should be wary again next year, because there's no guarantee Winston will stay with them. If he becomes the kingmaker again, it's a position, Bob, that he loves. He'll go wherever suits him. So it's not as principled as, say, National voters would like. And then at the end, it doesn't again surprise me that Labour voters went for New Zealand First. If you're a die-in-the-wool Labourite, basically hell's going to freeze over before you would ever vote for National or ACT.
Right.
And if you want to vote and you feel you can't vote for Labour because you were annoyed at Hipkins and Jacinda and all that, you vote New Zealand First. That's what I would suggest happened. And it goes the other way too. National voters, not on this graph per se, but when National voters are really, really grumpy with their party, as they have been over the various years, they're not going to vote Labour. They're looking for alternatives, which is why you will see the votes increase for likes of ACT and New Zealand First.
Yeah. Okay, no, just found it very interesting. Just wanted to, that's sort of some data that's just been analysed from a voter poll that they do after each election. I think they survey 2,000 or 3,000. So it's just interesting to see some of the interpretation on that. All right, Stats New Zealand have come out with their latest data. The married rate continues to fall. One News were talking about this. Radio New Zealand were very excited that there were an extra 29 same-sex marriages, although a third of same-sex marriages come from overseas, and they represent less than 3% of all marriages. But anyway, Radio New Zealand can get all excited. Interestingly enough, One News managed to talk about it on TV, but they didn't go to a marriage celebrant. No, they went to an elopement celebrant. So, good on them. Now, I didn't load the graph of the actual marriage rate. So if you can just do a filler and I will just find that graph. But the marriage rate decreasing, you concerned? Does it matter?
Well, it does matter. So it's sad and disappointing, but a bit like an earlier conversation, Bob, it's not a complete surprise. I mean, there's been an all-out and continual attack on marriage, as simple as that. I mean, that was part of the reason to change the marriage definition laws, is not for great numbers, in this case of gay or lesbian couples, to get officially married. It was simply to undermine the institution as we understand it. And the fact that there's, an elopement specialist while talking marriage just reinforces it. They're not here in the media to celebrate marriage. And so I think, society picks up on it, and it looks like you've got that's the carry graph. On, but I think this is really telling.
So 1969 is the peak there. 45 out of every 1,000 eligible people were getting married, and it's now dropped to just 8. So it's a sixth of the rate. And I think, my argument at the forum in my presentation was that as the marriage rate has dropped, so too has the fertility rate. We're having less kids. We're delaying marriage, which affects the biological clock. And because families are being formed late, we're having less kids, and the stickiness of marriage isn't holding marriages together, and which is ironic as we head into Father's Day and acknowledge the importance of dads. So, but yeah, the media, I've always argued that the media only talk about marriage when they want to redefine it. The fact that, they got all excited about same-sex marriages climbing, even though it was 29 extra on the previous year, it shows that we're not going to get a serious debate. And I think the bit that bugged me the most was that they never, had the nous to actually go and ask the question, does it matter? Should we be concerned that the marriage rate is declining? They will never ask that question, despite the fact that we've put out reports saying that actually it's a big fiscal cost to the taxpayer of picking up broken families. So, yeah, I don't think we'll ever get past that, will we?
No. Well, actually, no, I should sound a bit more hopeful. I think, we will see change in the future. I am hopeful for change. I mean, you talked at the conference about courage at a cultural tipping point. So I think things will eventually get better, but we're not talking next week, next year, or probably even this decade. No. But, marriage is just one of those fundamental relationships, which, of course, at one level goes without saying. But the research is really clear, as you know, Bob. It's actually a stable environment for both the man and the woman for the development of children, that stability is just incredibly key. And we're walking away from that. We're in a much more transactional and transitional types of relationships now. And we wonder why there's greater fatherlessness, more violence, obviously more anxiety, frustrations, the economic side you touched on, but even just the deep emotional hurt because if marriages do break up. And then linked to all of that is the element of children. I mean, not all marriages result in children or are desired, but we have a demographic collapse coming in the West. We're not replacing our populations, and this is causing major problems. Doesn't matter if it's Japan or South Korea, America or New Zealand, and it all goes back. Well, sorry, that's actually a bit too specific. It is strongly linked or correlated to marriage. And I mean, what is the rate now? I should know off the top of my head, but I'm just looking at that chart right at the end.
Well, actually, just keep talking for 2 secs. I'm just loading up. I'm just loading up an image for you of the fertility rate just to show you how bad it is. Here we go.
Well, as Bob does that, I'd just like to apologise to all the grammarians whose heads exploded about 1 minute ago when he talked about having less children rather than fewer children. On behalf of Family First, I'd like to apologise.
So there's the fertility rate. You can see 2.2 is the replacement rate. So that's 1 for mum, 1 for dad, and 0.2 for those who can't have children or don't. The latest stat out is 1.58. So we're not replacing our population. And the sad fact of the matter is, Simon, that when you and I retire, we want a younger workforce to pay our pension, and our chances of that is getting less and less. They reckon that in 50 years, the number of people under 65 will be 2 to 1 of those over 65. That's not enough workers to pay the pension for all the elderly people, the retirees. So, yeah, there's problems there. Yep.
Yeah, and it's on the political point around superannuation, which is not what we're strictly talking about. It's one of the real frustrations that multiple governments, from the time I was there with John Key, obviously through Jacinda's time, and now they keep pushing the question of the superannuation age down the road. And look, this has to be addressed as fast as possible. It doesn't mean you change the age to 67 tomorrow. You give it time, but you've nailed it there. We're not replacing ourselves. We can't fund the support to our elderly into the future on the current trajectory. It's quite scary.
Okay, look, we've heard a lot about the gender pay gap and how disastrous that is, but then next minute, Stats NZ last week also came out and said gender pay gap narrows to the lowest on record since they started recording it back in 1998 or 1999. In fact, let me show you the graph. And look at that, the far right there, massive drop in the gender pay gap. Now, just, we will cover gender pay gap and the mental gymnastics around that statement in itself. But I have just circled, so the first circle is when Helen Clark was the Prime Minister, and the second circle is when Jacinda Ardern was the Prime Minister. They didn't seem that serious about the gender pay gap, but thank heavens for Christopher Luxon, because it is just fantastic, lowest ever. I'm being facetious here, but what's going on here, Simon?
Well, I think, look, I'm no expert in the gender pay gap because I actually find it as a concept very arbitrary.
Of course.
Because as we know, people are not paid differently based on their actual biological sex rather than their gender, to be completely precise. But I find it a bit of a mystery of how well, actually, that's not fair too. It's not a mystery. It's just arbitrary. I'll just return to that where it's completely and totally arbitrary. But notice when and that graph was brilliant, when Labor's in control and things are getting worse or are stagnant, they never hit up about it. But when National's in government, and it was only a few months back that Louise Upston was getting hit over the head about the gender pay gap. So basically, it's a whacking stick for progressives in the media. And that's reinforced by the fact that has anyone seen reporting about this in the newspapers now that it's good news? And the answer, of course, is no.
Yeah, incredible. And you're right, the gender pay gap, the problem is that it compares all jobs. They'll be struggling to find any pay gap where you've got men and women in the same industry doing the same job. If there is a difference between salaries between a man and a woman, they've got every well, the law says that can't happen. The problem with the gender pay gap is that it's based on different industries, different jobs, and fails to recognise that many women take time off to have children and raise families, and some men do as well. So, yeah, very arbitrary. It's always been that. So, but I just thought that was a fantastic heading, and I didn't expect to see it in the media, and lo and behold, I didn't. So,
No.
Yeah, no surprises on that.
This is one of the problems with the coalition government is the media are very happy and quick to put the boot in. Yeah. They are very reluctant to give any praise, and it must be immensely. In fact, I know it's immensely frustrating to them because the government is trying hard, and there are genuinely things they're doing well. Not everything. We've talked points of policy here we don't like, but they are doing well in some regards. But media give them no credit.
Yeah. Okay. Luxon may have been a little bit naughty for taking the credit on something that was actually arranged by his predecessor, Jacinda Ardern. It was around this Amazon factory. I thought the comments by Chris Hipkins on this were a bit immature. Anyway, have a watch.
New Zealand, he told the crowd, has been shuttered for investment for far too long.
Well, I have to tell you, that has well and truly changed under this government, because we are open for business and we are obsessed on growth above everything.
A curious observation to make, given this historic Amazon investment was announced 4 years ago by Labour.
Christopher Luxon's been trying to claim that his government's opened the door to foreign investment, and his proof point is a multi-billion-dollar investment by Amazon that was announced during Labour's time in government. I think that just shows that Christopher Luxon's rhetoric doesn't keep up with the reality.
Labour even put out this press statement, labelling Christopher Luxon the Fig Jam Prime Minister.
What does Fig Jam stand for? Christopher Luxon is the Fig Jam Prime Minister. I think people can have a lot of fun Googling that.
So we Googled it. Fig Jam is Australian slang to describe someone who is overly boastful of their abilities. Fig Jam stands for I'm good, just ask me.
Okay, so type of rhetoric you expect out of year 9 or 10, but anyway, good on Labour. Luxon has lost the narrative on this one, hasn't he? It has backfired by not giving appropriate credit to what's gone on beforehand, which is a lesson for all of us, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, it's not unusual for current political parties to take credit for things. Like when you open a new hospital or a new road, the government of the day is going to celebrate it. It's more often than not started by others. But I think partly, again, the media looking for any reason to put the boot in. But this case it just, again, is a lack of media control by the Prime Minister and his team, because he probably did, from what we're hearing reported, just slightly over-egg it, does claim just a bit too much. There are a few sentences he uses which do help him, but the overall feeling was that, this is something that they've achieved. And so that quickly got called out. As I say, the journalist went, oh, hold on a moment, I'm pretty sure this sounds similar to something in 2021. And then it got worse because Jonathan Milne from the newsroom yesterday pointed out that actually Amazon haven't built one data centre in New Zealand at all. In fact, no longer have plans to do data centres. They're actually just putting their technology into some existing ones. So it's a technical point, but it's just exceptionally untidy. If you as the Prime Minister are going to front foot what is a massive announcement, $7.5 billion, 1,000 jobs, if you're headlining that, you better be 200% sure you're right on every facet. And unfortunately, they haven't been.
Okay, just a funny one. Jackie says, I have to leave as our local theatre is having a meeting. So, Jackie, thanks for watching. Really appreciate you being here. And Robert says, this is in relation to the Pati Maori candidate trying to find her phone. She was just getting a quick game of Angry Birds. And anyway, I thought that was quite a funny little story. Right, just very quickly, just to show that we're being level-headed here, there's a story about whether Chris Hipkins is going to be rolled, and if Labour did lose the by-election on Saturday, would his leadership be challenged? And then, of course, they're talking about this guy, Peni Henare, who's standing in the Tāmaki Makaurau seat. I never had Peni Henare on my bingo list of replacement Labour leaders, did you?
No, sorry, I just muted my microphone because I could hear someone coming into my house in a good way, and I knew the door was about to be slammed. So, no, he's not ever been put forward as a leader before, and that he seems to be allowing the rumour is not good at all.
No.
I suppose partly it's giving him a little bit more coverage. Maybe it will help his by-election. People go, oh gosh, he could become the Prime Minister. But it's unhelpful. And
but actually, the interesting thing was that even Orini Kaipara, the Pati Maori, talked glowingly about Peni Henare being the first Māori Prime Minister.
Yeah, which was odd
weird.
as well at a whole number of levels, including you never praise your opponent. I mean, it's just, talk about putting wind in the man's sails, but it doesn't help Hipkins' leadership. I mean, at the end of the day, while he's doing okay, Labour cannot avoid the fact that he was the Prime Minister before and he lost, and obviously very much associated with a number of very poor decisions. So I have no doubt that his Labour colleagues are talking often and frequently about, who should replace him. But you know what, to be honest, Bob, that's a problem across a lot of the political parties. There isn't the depth of talent, and it sounds terrible for me to say that around former colleagues, but you've got really good people, but not everyone in there is potentially leadership material, and it's actually quite hard to get a list on either side.
Yeah. And look, I think there is that, because he's lost an election, there is that loser element associated with Chris Hipkins. Now, people will immediately say, well, what about Bill English, who, got trounced in an election in 2005 and then came back and won in 2020, 2017. But the difference there, of course, is that 12 years to prove that he was a capable and able minister, or whatever they say in political terms. So he sort of did the time. Chris Hipkins is trying to turn it around in 3 years. I don't think he'll be able to. So, yeah, Labour might be best to roll that one. Look, just very quickly, just one more topic, and that is that New Zealand First is pushing back on the whole digital ID around car licences. They want to maintain the fact that people can have the hard copy of the licence, hard copy of whatever it is. I mean, passports, I assume they're staying hard copy as well. Actually, to be honest, that's one thing that I wouldn't mind having a digital version of my passport, because whenever I travel internationally, I am paranoid about where my passport is. In fact, when I've gone overseas with Gordon, our tech guy, to do our filming, like when we went to Israel and Maria's, the standing joke was I was always saying to Gordon, got your passport? Got your passport? So digital, wouldn't that be too bad? But New Zealand First, I think, is this just grandstanding, or is it actually playing to their audience that there are a lot of people who are very nervous about the digital ID, and so this is good noise?
Oh, it is. I think it's good politics in the same way that he had a bill put forward into the ballot, rather, around cash, that you still have to maintain cash. So, yeah, is it grandstanding? Absolutely. Is it good politics? Certainly. Is it appealing to a number of Kiwis who are uncertain about this? Yes. And actually, Winston's very good at that. He did it at the last election. He just picks up 1% here and 1% there, and it all makes a difference. Look, I'll probably make myself unpopular with some people. This is not something I get too worked up about myself, partly because so much is digitally identified these days. Logging on to your bank app, for example. Even your passport, a lot of that information, you might have it physically, but it's all been digitally stored anyway. I do understand a little bit of the concern that if you end up with the China model of social security, where all your data is stored and controlled by the government, they can actually begin to influence how you live. Yeah. But again, for me, that's tempered. Ultimately, Bob, a lot of our lives are already digital. We're coming to you digitally.
Exactly. Yeah. Look, I think in some ways we have compromised that just with passports, and lots of some of us use Real Me. But look, I understand the concern, and that's why I think Winston's probably being quite clever here, because he's leaving the door open. I guess it was our argument during the whole COVID mandate. There were some people who are happy to get the vaccine, but we wanted to recognise those who weren't and look for alternatives, and that's what Winston is doing. And there will be an audience. In fact, let me just check a couple here. Adrian is this. I think this is your wife, but masking is Adrian. I'll say it again. Simon for president, morality, decency, and families first. There we go. Murray says he's concerned that it's the big picture, Simon. And
I think Murray's right on that. I mean,
you're
getting more. The single source of truth is now becoming the single source of digital ID. The single source of money is digital, not cash. So it's removing options from people. So no, I understand that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just catching up with. Here we go. You're not a politician anymore, Simon, so I can put this one up. Too many mealy-mouthed politicians. There we go. Yeah, that's enough for today. Look, we are out of time. We're just about at 6 o'clock, so we've gone well over time. Thank you, Simon. Great job. And thank you, team, for watching. We will be back next Thursday. We'll do 2 weeks in a row just to show how good we are to recover from the forum. What's today? Thursday. So I'll be here tomorrow morning with Daybreak at 7:30. Simon, you can have the day off for being here tonight. So well done.
I'll just keep reading that Human Rights Commission report.
Yeah, what page are you up to?
Well, I'm on to my second reading now. I'm only about 70 pages in. I've skimmed the 427, but we're now reading again up to number 70. But yeah, anyway, when you think you have a bad job, Simon, just be thankful that you're not proofreading the Law Commission report on gender, 447 pages of it. That's a real job. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, thanks for watching. Have a great night.